Welcome to INOvators, a series where we sit down with thought leaders in the industry to talk about some of the most pressing issues in healthcare today. My name is Justine Giancola. I'm on the corporate communications team here at Inovalon, and joining me today is Tammy Sadowski, who leads the DE&I team at Inovalon. Thanks for being here today, Tammy.
Thank you, Justine.
You know, Tammy, you and I talk all the time. We know how important DE&I is to any organization today. What are some of the key methods that businesses are using to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment?
Justine, I want to start by reiterating, you are 100% correct. Businesses today completely recognize that in order to impact business outcomes, they need to have a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment. And in order for that to really work, to really stimulate that, you need to make sure that you're focusing on one key thing, which is change management. Each and every employee is part of a company's DE&I journey, and so we all own a piece of that. So how do we work differently in order to make that happen? How do we hire differently? How do we work with our peers differently? How do we train people differently? How do we promote them? How do we attack each and every one of our business processes with a mindset that says, hey, I want this to be a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment where we get the full perspectives of everyone that we work with so we can leverage those unique talents and abilities in order to be successful. And so those, to me, change management is the key, and then embedding that change into each and every one of the business processes that every employee does each and every day in their daily work.
Absolutely. And, you know, another big part of business, especially here at Inovalon, is innovation, software development. How would you say that DE&I impacts those areas?
So there's a few different ways that when you think about DE&I that is directly tied to innovation. I'd say the first one is you really want to make sure that your workforce mirrors the market. This is key because the experiences that your workforce has should be equal to the market so that as you look at new products you're offering, new services you're offering, what are the outcomes? How does that look for those individuals? And based on that, if you have a workforce that mirrors the market, it's much easier to answer that question. The next thing I would focus on really is innovation itself. How do we drive in those new ideas, those new perspectives, make sure they're being heard? How do we make sure that every person in the room is able to bring their authentic self to work, to bring those new ideas and perspectives into what they do, and then we leverage those wonderful, new, innovative ideas to drive change, to drive innovation, and again, ultimately to drive a new customer experience, new products, and new services. Once you've got that generated, people are giving their new ideas, you're really innovating things, keeping that going, nurturing that is key. And the best way to nurture that is to make sure that you're recognizing and providing people not just with a kudos recognition, but things that incentivize them to continue to offer those new and innovative ideas. And if you think about it, it's like a snowball at the top of a hill. As it begins to roll down, the snowball gets larger and larger, so does the innovation. So that's really the key way to make that happen.
And I think we've really seen a lot of that already here at Inovalon. But to lean into that a little bit further, what does DE&I mean at Inovalon?
So our DE&I strategy here is really focused on 4 pillars. I'm going to walk through each one of them, and I'm going to give you some examples of how it plays out in our work environment. So the first one is build a culture of DE&I. And really that is about building a culture where our people feel like they can be heard, belong, contribute, and thrive. There's a wide variety of ways that this can happen in an organization. One of the ways that we really spark some of that culture here is through what we call our employee resource groups. Many companies call them ERGs. And they bring an element where people are allowed to share experiences, share ideas, share thoughts across the entire organization. And so what that does is it begins to build a culture where people speak up. They feel heard. They feel okay with bringing those new ideas to bear. Secondly, if you think about what I said earlier about how every employee owns DE&I, our second pillar is define accountabilities and measure success. In our case, we have a wide variety of ways that we define accountabilities. We have some specific roles. So for example, obviously there's my team. There's also our DE&I Steering Committee, which is a grouping of approximately 10 senior leaders who I meet with monthly, who really help to support what we're doing from a DE&I perspective at the most senior levels. Then we have our inclusion advocates. And if you really want to think about what they are, they're ambassadors. We have a couple hundred of them across the organization, across different functions, in different levels, all different types of roles, and they help to drive our DE&I message throughout the organization. Of course, we have our ERGs, who are a little more specific to certain demographics, but they also have allies who help with that as well. But when you think about accountabilities, there's more than that. Right? There's the way that a manager makes sure that they're hiring in an inclusive manner. There's the way that you are on a project team and you make sure that you're being more inclusive. Who can you include on that project team? How do you make sure that different people's ideas and perspectives are heard? Perhaps it's how we promote our people or even how we train them. How do we make sure that we're providing them content in different ways so that different people can absorb that content and really use it in their day-to-day jobs? So that's essentially what define accountabilities and measure successes. Now, when we talk about measurement, most organizations simply look at how many people did you hire by certain demographics, how many people did you promote by certain demographics, and those are important. I don't want to steer away from those, but I would say that we've taken it one step further here at Inovalon, and what we've done is we've created our inclusion index. And what that is an annual survey where we get the pulse of our employees. How included do they feel? And if so, why do they feel included? What else can we be doing to make them feel included? How does DE&I play out in their day-to-day jobs? And so based on that feedback, we use that not only to see where we're at in our journey, but also, and more importantly, we use that to inform what we're going to do the next year so that we make sure all of those employees feel heard. So we're just taking that measuring success one more step. And in our inclusion index this year, our numbers did go up anywhere from about 3 to 10%, depending on the particular metric. So we are beginning to see some change where people from last year to this year are already beginning to feel more included. And we consider that a success. Our third pillar, foster inclusive thought leadership, is exactly what you would expect it to be. It is really focused on two things. First of all, training, which is extremely important. But we take that a step further with our DE&I Thought Leadership series. That's a series that we hold quarterly, both for people managers as well as individual contributors. And we cover a wide variety of DE&I content and topics. But the key, what really makes that work, is that we bring people together across all areas of the business, both levels as well as functions, to share experiences. What have they been able to do to build more inclusion? Where have we maybe gotten it wrong? And some of the lessons that we've learned from that. And that sharing of information, that sharing of different thoughts and experiences really helps us to foster inclusive thought leadership. And then last but not least, our fourth pillar is embed DE&I into business processes. I talked about this a little bit earlier with the change management. This is really looking at how do we work. There are systemic and business processes that we do every day. Some are completely unbiased. Some may not be. And so the work that we do here in DE&I is to look at each and every one of those processes, assess what we're doing, and come up with an extremely non-biased and inclusive way of approaching those processes, which has driven some change. And some of those processes that we've worked on changing in the last couple of years really are processes that have been in place for years. And driving that change can be challenging at times. But the end result is that ultimately we create new processes that are far more equitable and inclusive.
Absolutely. Tammy, there have been great strides taken over the last few years as far as our DE&I initiatives go, which has been wonderful to see, wonderful to be a part of. And, as you know, patient care, outcomes, that is part of the Inovalon mission. So what I'd love to hear is how do you feel that DE&I actually influences patient care and those outcomes that are so important to us here at Inovalon?
That is a wonderful question, Justine, and it is really the core of why we talked about the things at the beginning that we talked about. So when we say DE&I impacts business outcomes, there are real levers that we can pull and that we have been pulling over the last few years to impact that. So when you think about patient outcomes in the case of our business model, really what we're focused on is how do we ensure that the data that we're providing can be used in a way to provide better patient outcomes. The only way that that really is successful is when we talk about that thing around mirroring the market. This is crucial because if you look at any level of patient outcome data, you can see that there are disparate outcomes quite often for various underrepresented populations, whether that be women, people of color, people in the LGBTQ plus community. The data is there to show that. The only way that we can really improve that from a DE&I perspective here at Inovalon is to make sure, number one, that we have people internally who are working on our products, who are working on our services, who are selling, who are talking to our customers, that understand that journey, can share their experiences, and really help our customers understand how to use the data better. Then, of course, if you think about that, that automatically means that there has to be a certain level of innovation. How do we look at the data differently so that we consult with our customers and provide them what they need, provide them with solutions specifically that can help make those patient outcomes better as well?
That makes perfect sense, Tammy. And, as I said at the beginning, you and I talk frequently, and taking the conversation kind of to that next step or that next level of how it impacts the market has been really interesting. So, Tammy, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It's been great talking to you. Thank you to everyone who has dialed in, and be on the lookout for our next podcast series. Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Justine. Bye.